I call the Planning Commission meeting for August 19th, 2021 to order. We'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Samantha, will you call the roll?
Mr. Varga?
Here.
Mr. Cicero?
Here.
Mr. Crocker?
Here.
Mr. Haddon?
Here.
Mr. Perkovich?
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting, July 29th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Samantha, will you call the roll?
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. On tonight's agenda, we have 4 public hearings, and we will follow this format. First, the applicants will have the opportunity to explain what they would like to do at a particular location. Second, anyone wishing to speak in favor of that proposal will be given the opportunity. Finally, anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be afforded the time to do so, or some people may just have questions. And with that, we have a conditional use permit to allow a vehicle charging station as a similar use at 7800 Reynolds Road. Is that applicant here? Please come up, state your name and address for the clerk.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Carrison, and I'm the Director of Environmental Strategy and Sustainability for Huntington National Bank. My address is 460 Wellington Way, Springboro, Ohio, 45066.
Could you spell your last name?
Sure. It's K-A-R-A-S-O-N.
Thank you. Please tell us a little of what you want to do at this location.
Sure. So we would like to put a single port charge point level 2 charging station at our branch located at 7800 Reynolds Road here in the city of Mentor. This is part, and you can see from the photos where the charging station is going to go. We see on slide 3 that there's a lot of traffic coming in from behind the branch, not where, sorry, the slide right before, right there. So where you can see highlighted in yellow, that is where we would like to put the proposed charging station, and the majority of the traffic coming into the branch is on the back side of the building where you have more parking spaces. So with the charging station, we have not experienced any sort of lines or any sort of traffic buildups because this is a level 2 charging station. This is meant to be a value add for our customers and non-customers to use. Through branch hours and non-branch hours, and also an amenity to the community for electric vehicles. If you go to the next slide, you can see where there's adequate site lighting for the station, proposed station spot, where there's also a curb there for to protect the station. So it is going to be in that peninsula. That is where we're proposing that it go. The next slide shows our branding. Standards of what the actual square feet of branding looks like. These are inserts that go in the station. If you go to the next slide, that is our signage to alert customers and non-customers of the bank what the space is, much like a handicap sign. And then the next slide shows the actual completion of what the space would look like when it is done. So with these stations, this is part of our environmental strategy as an organization. Huntington takes everything with the environment very serious. Climate change is a very serious issue. We want to do our part in adjusting or transitioning to a clean economy. And so this is our step forward with that. We know that also this is where the future of cars are going. A lot of our customers have electric vehicles. We view this as a value-add service to our customers during branch hours. They're free during branch hours, and then they're $1 per hour after branch hours. We've installed these now. We have about, I would say, close to 50 ports throughout the state of Ohio. Majority of them are in the Columbus area, but this is something that we feel like, and you can see in that slide all of the different charging stations that we have and what they look like when they're completed. But this is something where they're meant to, by the branding, they're meant to stand out, they're meant to be visible, so that the community knows that they're there for their use, as well as they blend in with our branding. So it's not something that sticks out. It's something that, much like an ATM, is meant to blend in with the building and what we're doing overall. But to show our commitment to the community, show our commitment to the environment, and just make people aware that they can charge at this location. There's an FAQ on the next slide. So it just talks about the purpose of it. Also how they're going to be utilized. They talk about how much it's going to cost, and that's at market price for a charging station. And then also the difference between a level 2 charger versus a DC fast charger. So if someone comes to the branch on a low charge, it would take them 2 to 3 hours to charge up with a level 2 charging station. If it was a DC fast charger like you see at gas stations and other places, that would take 15 minutes. So that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about just a level 2 charging station. And we've, like I said, not seen any lines. We've not seen any sort of traffic buildups. And we do not anticipate that at all at this location as well. And then you could just see the last slide, I just included other charging stations, level 2 charging stations that are in the city of Mentor, and they are visible. They do have branding. So we're just requesting that we follow those same guidelines that these customers had as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anybody here wishing to speak in opposition of this proposal? This public hearing is closed. Is there anything from the administration? Mr. Flipiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you like us to address this right now or wait till the item comes up on your agenda?
This is it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so thank you, and we appreciate Huntington's interest in sustainability. Obviously, this is something that all communities are seeing perpetuation of. Certainly a good thing. We are seeing some transition. I don't know that electric fueling stations will be the end of it. We may see some compressed natural gas filling stations and others. We've been approached with that, and we have some examples of that within, certainly within Lake County and a couple within the city. We would view this as is presented to you as a accessory use, in this case in a B2. We're requiring a conditional use permit, and I think that the conditions that you see attached to this, for the most part, reflect, I think, the city's general position on these going forward. I think the commission could probably expect that you'll see a code amendment sometime in the near future that will carve out a section of our code so that we don't have to treat these all as conditional uses going forward. That would incorporate the understanding that it's probably something that a lot of different locations, predominantly business in nature, but perhaps even some residential in nature or otherwise, would be moving forward on such technology. In our case, I think the primary components of that are outlined here, and essentially, while we certainly appreciate Huntington's interest in the visibility of this charging port as a statement of their commitment to sustainability, as a community, we're concerned about aesthetics because while this is one and it may blend in very nicely, there may be others that don't blend in as nicely. There may be others that are multiple ports. And I think this commission understands and shares the commitment to high-quality aesthetics throughout our major business corridors, and certainly 306 falls within that category. So the things that we have proposed here with respect to conditions, we would prefer all of these moving forward to be in either the side or rear yard areas. With adequate lighting for purposes of security, to minimize the branding so that it doesn't rise to the level of advertisement or excess signage, which of course we're all sensitive to. Ensuring the safety to the public, requiring requiring them to follow standards, electrical standards outlined by national electrical standards, and also require some level of annual inspection so that we can ensure that because as we understand that this clearly are not going to be used as a primary purpose of any of these sites. It's going to be one of those things that gets installed and probably is used, but isn't thought of too terribly often by the owners after that fact. So maintaining the safety of that and its proper use over time would be important to us as a community. I think that covers most of it in the conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you. Is there anything from the commission members on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
based on the proposal and the statements made by the city, it would seem to me that what the issue really is location, pretty much, with this request. I mean, I don't know that I heard anything that would be in conflict with the city's desires other than location.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much?
I would say that that's the top of the list in terms of
I know, I mean, I
the
saw that there's some
concerns that we would
conditions
have.
or
Right.
limitations, right?
Right, because what they have proposed pretty much would follow all of what we have asked in terms of, would meet the conditions. I'm not certain, not knowing where they may place this outside of their proposed location, I don't know what the lighting situation would be there.
Based on the image that's on the screen, that's their proposed location.
I understand, but
That's not
but
going,
if they were,
Yeah.
right, and I believe that the statement was that there's adequate lighting there, but if it were in a different location, again, that would be an important, you asked if that was the primary concern. I think lighting is also
Is
a
also a
primary
concern, right,
concern for
right.
safety purposes.
right. Speak to the applicant. Would you consider a different location? Are you in a position to consider a different location?
I think one of the reasons why we chose that is because the traffic is heavy on the back of the building. So this is a very unique situation where the traffic is less on the front of the building than it is on the back of the building because of all the parking. So that's why we chose it. It is visible, at least going into the branch. But I thought that the location, besides visibility, was because of kind of traffic issues, and I believe that this is the best location for any sort of traffic issues that could arise.
And again, following with this line of thought, if you flipped it to the space opposite the building, next to what looks like a silver van or something like that, that last space right there, yeah, would that create a harm or to your operations if you did put it there? Because I think that would work for the city's concerns.
Sure. I mean, I think that, would it create harm? No. I mean, it wouldn't. But the whole purpose of having an electrical vehicle charging station is that so folks know it's there. And people who have electric vehicles would know that it's there based off of a map or, their own charging infrastructure that they have. But it's also supposed to attract, even members of your community that are thinking about getting an electric vehicle. To know where these charging stations are located, I think, is critical to anyone that's considering buying one in the future, and just showing that this is a community that welcomes it and that wants to have these. I feel like if it's in the back of the building, it's sending a different message.
Except with your own statement, most of your traffic is in the back of the building, so.
Yeah, and
That would also still promote its visibility to most of your customers, because that's where the activity is. I'm not trying to debate you.
No.
I'm just
It's
trying to.
for customers and non-customers. It's to all members of the community. And if it's in the back, I don't think it would be seen.
So much by the public.
Exactly.
I understand.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Flibiak?
Just to make a comment on that, from what we understand, again, we're not intending these to be well signed to the point where you're going to see, you know, big glaring, here's a charging port, because again, that certainly would diminish the overall aesthetic quality of that front facade of the building and along the right-of-way in this case, which is our primary concern. So, you know, seeing these from the roadside are pretty hard where they exist now. And from what we understand, there's a pretty good network of data information available through apps and that pretty much highlight. You can get on an app and see where most electric charging stations are, and I'm sure that this one would fall into that same category. And assuming that most of it would be local traffic anyway, because it's predominantly intended for their customers, they're I think to Mr. Vargas' point, they're going to know it's there because
Right.
they'll be using the bank.
Well, and people who are using electric cars,
Find them.
maybe this is a generalization unsupported, but that they have a certain technological approach to, you know, their app and their phone, and that's part of their process, I think.
Is there anything else from the commission members?
I just have a question to the city. I know the city's developing or is looking at further guidelines about these. This is a kind of a hard location because they're on a corner, so they have two primary elevations, so to speak, and so those become dropped off of the desired location. What would happen if you're in a strip center and you only have a front, you don't have side yards or a back? Is the city considering those kinds of scenarios too?
And we've talked through that. Again, we haven't really developed a final rough draft of guidelines. What you're seeing here in these conditions, as I said earlier, is probably going to serve as the template for that. But I think we'd have to address that.
In terms of
That
location,
need,
yeah,
yeah.
just because the location's based
Sure.
on circumstance.
You know, and in that instance, you know, maybe we look for the most inconspicuous place, you know, maybe not immediately in front of the business, but on the other side of the drive aisle, close, whatever the most inconspicuous place is. Raises another point, which is highlighted as a condition. Doesn't affect Huntington because they're over-parked there in terms of their parking spaces, but you can have multiple charging ports and one station, let's just say. So they take up parking spaces. So one of the concerns is if you're right on that number and you put take up two of those spaces for charging ports, where you're going to find the other parking. So not an issue here, but obviously one of those things that we're mindful of.
That brings up another question that I'd like to ask the applicant. Wherever this is, before we decide, someone who's not, how do you limit who gets to park there? If someone parks there who doesn't have an electric car, but they just park there because it's convenient to them or they think it's convenient to them, how do you maintain control over that space so that it's available to electric car use?
Sure, we haven't experienced that problem at our branches, but if someone did, I would assume someone from the branch would tell them that they can't park there.
So you might put up a sign.
Yeah, there is signage right in front,
I'm sorry, didn't.
Yep,
Yeah.
there's
So-
signage there's plenty of
Limited
signage on
to.
the limited to.
Okay.
And, you know, again, I guess my question to the city would be, what is the harm of this being visible with the signage? Something that could very easily look like an ATM out in the parking lot because of branding, which I would think would not have any issue with being accepted. What is the issue if you go to the next slide?
Well, again,
with that finished product.
you would be surprised at how often we're asked that question. What is the harm in us putting a drop-off box in the front? Yeah, I think you'll find that under our zoning code, most accessory uses, I think, in fact, nearly all accessory uses are required to be in the side or rear yard setback areas. So, the simple answer is that's the current community standard.
And I can appreciate that. I'm just, with electric vehicles going to be the norm in about 5 to 10 years, it's going to turn from accessory to something that's almost required, I think, going forward for some of these areas, to build out the infrastructure for charging.
Don't disagree with you at all. This is really just a matter of where they're placed. We don't disagree with your desire to have it. I think it's commendable.
And then just another quick question. I noticed if you go to the other customers in Mentor, the last one of the last slides, that one, those are visible and those are in the middle. I guess if those are in the city limits already, how are they not abiding by the conditions that you had for this permit?
No, and we thank you for pointing those out.
They're also, the two of them are at an automotive-type place. And there's a little bit of a difference there than a bank. Is there anything else from the commission members? So it seems like we're at a bit of an impasse here.
Sure.
So I guess, are you willing to move it to the back or not?
We can take a look at it and get back to the city and let them know.
Okay,
Yeah, we should table this.
We should table it then.
Yes, I agree.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to table it.
Second.
Thank you very much for your time.
Samantha, please call the roll. Thank you.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero,
Yes.
Mr. Crocker,
Yes.
Mr. Haddon,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich,
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes. We have a conditional use permit to allow a temporary event at 7850 Mentor Avenue. Is that applicant here? Could you please come up, state your name and address for the clerk. Tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sharon Bennett. I'm the marketing director at Great Lakes Mall, 7850 Mentor Avenue, Mentor. And we are seeking to host a Boo and Brew event, which will be on October 9th from 12 to 5. We had to actually change the time. It was listed on the application for 2 to 6, and we had to change the time to accommodate the bands that we now have set to play. This is our second annual event. The previous event was held in 2019. It is the exact same format that we had in 2019. It was a great success. We had over 1,500 people. It is a family-friendly event, and we are partnering with the Lake Humane Society, so it will be a fundraiser. And we're just going to have all kinds of outdoor activities, fall activities for families, some inflatables, some games, costume contests. We're going to have some food trucks and 2 live bands. And the only thing that's not on the drawing that I sent that I realized, we're going to have a restroom trailer, which is going to be along that brick wall in the back, right there, yes. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone wishing to speak against? This public hearing is closed. Is there anything from the administration?
At this time, Mr. Chairman, except if you do choose to approve this, we would need to amend the hours of operation in condition 1 and 2.
So what were those hours again?
It'll be 12 to 5.
Thank you. Is there anything from the commission members? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with 7 conditions. The first and second condition, changing the times from 2 to 6 to 12 to 5.
Second.
Samantha, we call the roll?
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero,
Yes.
Mr. Crocker,
Yes.
Mr. Haddon,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
We have a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility, Starbucks, at 8323 Tyler Boulevard. Is that applicant here? Please state your name and address for the clerk.
Good evening. My name is David Budge. I'm with WXZ Development. Our address is 22720 Fairview Center Drive, Fairview Park, Ohio.
Please tell us a little bit about the drive-through.
Sure. This is a proposal for a 2,000 square foot Starbucks on Tyler Boulevard in front of the Giant Eagle that's there. There are 2 now vacant out parcels in front of the Giant Eagle fronting Tyler Boulevard, and this would be locating it immediately adjacent to the light that's there. With the application, you've got a preliminary site plan a floor plan, colored elevations, a landscape plan for the development. Starbucks typically employs 12 full-time and as many as 18 part-time employees, and they typically operate from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. Starbucks is proposing approximately 30 seats for its restaurant and approximately 20 seats for the patio. We've read staff's report, and I've got our project architects, Bowen Architects, here to answer questions if we get into the elevations. So happy to answer any questions. I know there were some questions or comments on the drive-through and dumpster location, so.
Yeah, we'll get to that during the site plan portion.
Oh, okay.
Is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone wishing to speak against? All right, this public hearing is closed. Anything from the administration?
Just the condition that is within the staff report.
Anything from fellow commission members?
After the drive-through.
Just the drive-through?
It's just draft. I'll entertain a motion on the drive-through portion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As far as the drive-through portion goes, you may want to talk about the site plan due to the concerns of the orientation of the building that was brought up in the report. Because if the orientation is changed, the drive-through location may change too, and it would affect the overall site as far as circulation and stacking goes.
But are we approving just allowing them to have a drive-through? Not yet getting to where it's at, Larry?
I believe you're approving the location and the functionality of the drive-through as part of this review.
Wouldn't that be the site plan review?
They go hand in hand in this case, because if you move the drive-through location, you're affecting the stacking, which may affect the site, and then the functionality
no,
of
I
the site.
understand, I
If
understand.
you approve the drive-through, no matter where they put it on the site, it's been approved.
No, we still have to approve the site plan.
Right.
But the use of the drive-through has been
Well,
approved.
use, yeah. I mean, we could say.
Well, you're only
yeah, you can
halfway
have a-
there.
You can have a drive-through, but we're still going to have to review the site plan. It's just so that we can vote.
I think we're semantics here.
I know. I
That's how it
understand.
is, Mr. Zeman.
Oh, he wishes you hadn't asked him.
Mr. Zeman?
I think your analysis and Mr. Rastetter's analysis obviously are kind of co-equal. You're right. You're basically saying that this is an appropriate location for a drive-through facility, or not, based upon your analysis of this location and this proposal. Obviously, there's particulars that would have to be fleshed out, via the site plan. Which way does the traffic flow, those nuts and bolts issues. So I think the commission is right, and I understand Mr. Rastetter's point is well, should be well taken as well. So, yeah, you can vote on it.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion on the conditional use permit for the drive-through.
I'll motion with the one condition.
Second. Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. All right, we have a conditional use permit to allow outside dining and/or drinking, Starbucks, 8323 Tyler Boulevard. Will you tell us a little bit about that function?
Sure. Again, this is typical for a Starbucks. They have a cafe as well as their indoor dining, or I should say they have a cafe, and they have a patio outside for people to enjoy drinks and food. Typically has 20 seats to the patio and is open all 4 seasons and is addressed in terms of landscaping and fencing in the landscape plan.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anybody wishing to speak against this proposal? This public hearing is closed. Anything from the administration?
Besides the 4 conditions, nothing.
Anything from my fellow commission members?
Just to be clear, same comment on the first, on the CUP. We are approving and allowing a patio to be on the site once the final site plan is approved.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the 4 conditions.
Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Crocker,
Yes.
Mr. Haddon,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes. All right, thank you. Just hang loose real quick. We're going to
Okay,
attend to one
thank
other
you.
thing. Yeah. We have a miscellaneous review to amend the approved development plan for the Village on the Maple subdivision. I'd like to get a motion to remove this from the table.
So moved. Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Crocker,
Yes.
Mr. Haddon,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes. All right, please state your name and address for the clerk and tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Riley Small. I live at 8567 Merkle Lane. I represent the Village on Maple HOA. Our original site plan that was part of our development had a walking path, as you can see in yellow, behind the homes on Merkle Lane. This path goes directly through a conservation area, which was kind of the initial point. But the issue is it's a conservation area. So in order to put that path in, it would eliminate probably hundreds of trees. Secondarily, there's obviously safety issues with this path. We've had a string of break-ins in the past year, and honestly, the neighbors don't feel so great about having a bunch of people being able to walk behind their homes. We came up with a new idea at one of our HOA board or HOA meetings. We voted on it. This was the winning plan idea. It would allow for the requirements based on the village green zoning. So we have a pathway, an area of recreation, a bench, and get to enjoy the nice pond that is on Maple Street. It also would extend the sidewalk where it currently abruptly stops, and it would create a safer area for people to cross the street.
Thank you. Is there anything from administration?
I would note that on the drawings showing the existing path, that sublot 11 was removed due to the requirements for the drainage pond to be increased. So the drawings are a little bit off.
Correct. That's mostly a pond now.
Thank you. Mr. Flippia.
Yeah, I think the main comment in the staff report is just that we would view this as a substantial departure from the approved plan. Obviously, when this was approved under what was then the existing RVG zoning category, these type of amenities and connecting them to the open space, which in this case was that conservation area, was, I think, one of the primary intents, both expressed by the commission and council. To remove that, in our opinion, is a substantial departure and removes a fairly significant amenity that was contemplated with the approval.
Thank you. Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga.
let me ask the city the first question. That is, can this pathway that was meant to involve the owners or the residents with the conservation area, can this path enter the conservation area? Is there anything, can there be a different path other than right up against the back of the houses? Would that be allowable within the conservation restrictions or allowances?
I wouldn't see why that would be a problem. I think the idea simply was that everyone in the subdivision would have an opportunity to enjoy generally the full length of that I could certainly see a proposal that would snake a path through there that might retain a tree barrier to provide some privacy to those northern lots there, but I don't know if that was
So then-
complicated, and there are some elevation issues there, obviously.
So my point of view, my position on this would be to alter the path so that it's not detrimental to the folks who have that, have the behind their house. That has always been an argument of mine about putting paths behind people's houses. but to put it somewhere else so that they would still have the opportunity to enjoy the natural environment, and that would allow all the all the residents of this subdivision to have that access, and not just to limit it to a little corner of the property.
Can I comment?
Sure.
The issue with that is that's all wetlands, like significantly wet wetlands. Huge mosquito populations. It's just not a viable option to snake it through there. If you go back there yourself, you won't be able to walk through it. It's sopping.
Well, I'm not saying it wouldn't require some construction.
But per the zoning, we can't build anything except have wood chip paths
Well.
for the
that
conservation
may-
concept. Yeah.
I understand, but the justification for the entire subdivision is based on this premise.
Which is why we suggested one that would not harm the conservation area, but would also let all of our neighbors enjoy the outdoor area.
Mr. Zeman?
Yes, the conservation, there's actually a conservation easement, which the city is the easement holder in this particular case. That was contemplated at the time that the development was under plan review. Before the city accepts a conservation easement, a study is undertaken relative to the area, whether or not it in fact would warrant acceptance of a conservation easement. And so the administration did to do a report on that. I don't have that at my fingertips. I didn't know we were going to do quite this deep dive tonight relative to the nature of that easement, but that's something that would be available to the commission if it wants. As I recall, there was identified by staff a number of really good specimen trees in there. The applicant's correct; it is wet. That was part of what is part of the reason that frankly wasn't really developable to begin with. And there was some indication, as I recall, relative to regeneration of some native species in that area. And I think the staff at that time was sensitive to what they were seeing in terms of regeneration. So, as I recall, the trail, and my memory might not be great here, was that we were really looking at the area of construction impact where this trail was going to be located. There may have been some scrub and some sumac or something in there, but I don't recall any specimen trees or any native species that at that time they thought warranted protection in that immediate area. And ultimately, I think it was primarily earmarked just to be able to, people could sort of get to, although it's very difficult to get within the conservation easement, and walk your dogs, and these are small yards, of course, and perhaps that would be appropriate for dog walkers and the business that the dogs do. So there really was a holistic view when this was both proposed, reviewed, and ultimately approved. That's just the history. And in terms of the request itself, I offer no opinion, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Zeman. Is there anything else from the commission members? Just something is glaring to me is that 21 of the 45 households are represented on the petition.
It was actually 24. I'm not sure where the 21 was counted. There was one household that signed twice, but there were 24 names on there, which was more than
Okay.
50% of the households.
And another glaring thing is a lot of the signatures are residents of Merkel and less of Baker. And there might be people on Baker that didn't sign this because they don't want to upset their neighbors, but they want the path.
I will be honest with you. We had a discussion on our HOA meetings. Everyone agreed this was we all voted then, and then the signature page went around until we got 50%. We started on Merkel at my house, and we walked all the way around, and once we had the 50%, we fulfilled the obligation for the submission, but as an actual HOA, we all voted yes for this.
But you see where I'm going.
I understand.
There could be a half a dozen people on Baker that maybe would have rather had Merkel, but they saw the site plan and went, you know what, I don't want the path in my backyard. I still want to live here, but I might have chose that if I knew that wasn't going to be here. You get where I'm just kind of playing a little
understand.
devil's advocate with the signature page. So,
I'm happy to go out and get more signatures if that's what it warrants.
I think it might. Well, at least for me. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't know if this is enough from my standpoint to get rid of the walking path, because
Again, we're not
At
getting
least-
rid of it. We're
Yeah,
adjusting.
right.
It's a major adjustment.
It's a major adjustment. Yeah.
And
I
Mr.
guess I'm kind of, I'm sorry, kind of where you are, Chair. If I saw more signatures, I mean, this path was for the benefit of the people that bought homes here. And if 100% of these folks said, we don't want the path, I'm cool. But right now, we're like, teetering on 50, and like you said, Mr. Chairman, it's everybody on Merkel. It may be worth, if the applicant feels she can go get significantly more signatures, it may be worth it.
We can do that. We can table it until next meeting, and I'll go get more signatures.
And Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Varga.
I was just going to say, an alternative, not that if we're going to table this, you might look at another alternative, which is to come up with a different plan that may engage the conservation area more than the plan that's been presented, which is basically just almost on the right-of-way. And so that's another I'm just throwing that out as another possibility. That may not be where you want to go, but.
It's just difficult with
I know it's difficult,
with
but.
the restrictions.
But the whole premise of getting the smaller lots and the more number of lots in this subdivision was to have this recreational opportunity. It's written into the purchase agreement that this is so that's, from our point of view, this was the condition for this subdivision in the first place.
Understand.
If we didn't have that, if we weren't going to go with that zoning, we'd have less lots there.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Tiedemann, yeah.
I mean, just to clarify, what we're deciding is this a substantial change from what was originally agreed to? I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but I don't know how more signatures are going to change that. Is this still, we still have to decide if it's a substantial change. So, I mean, if we want to table it and see if we can come back with a different proposal that is similar to what was originally agreed to, because that's why this neighborhood was created, because we said we would do this.
Right, I understand that, Mr. Tiedemann, but if a significant amount of the residents there who bought homes, knowing this walk was there and now live there, and feel this walk creates a safety hazard or something else, I think it's incumbent on us to at least know that for the whole and then decide, do we allow this not to be built? And maybe have another suggestion.
Mr. Zeman, if we, this is just a question, I don't know. If we change this plan, and there are people who would prefer it to not be changed, are we taking from people, from their purchase agreement, from their ownership of their property? We're taking value from them by making that agreement?
Yeah,
It would be a taking?
No, I don't agree that it would be a regulatory taking, but in terms of value, that's probably getting into market analysis and way outside my.
That's not a concern at this, for us, if we
No,
need to change one way or the other.
The HOA does have the legal authority to make this request, so. Yes.
Okay.
And to the extent an individual homeowner may take exception to that's, we'd cross that legal bridge when we got to it, but.
His problem is with the homeowners association.
I don't want to be
not
that
with the city.
simplistic about it, and I don't necessarily want to take that much of a legal dive tonight. Again, the HOA is a valid applicant, and they are making the request. And to the extent an individual homeowner may feel as though their legal rights are different or need to be protected in some way, it's certainly their prerogative to do so or seek whatever appropriate legal counsel they think they need.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Flip, yeah.
Again, not weighing in on this from a legal perspective, but I think to Mr. Perkovich's point, the code is fairly clear that if the commission deems this to be a substantial departure, then you have to recommend that it not be approved. That your recommendation to council is that it not be approved. So I think your standard obviously is to find something that's substantial, not. I would suggest that your interpretation of that is correct. Eliminating an amenity would have to be a substantial departure.
And it's a recommend, and any change to development plan is voted on by council.
It goes to council?
Yeah, it would go to
Yeah.
council, right, Right, we're just
Yeah,
recommending.
you're making a recommendation,
We're just kicking
one
it.
way or the other.
You're making a recommendation to council.
Making a recommendation.
Can I interject something?
Yeah, please state your name and address.
I'm Frederick Sopnikar, 8601 Baker Avenue. So
You're
I
gonna
am
have-
one of the Baker Avenue people.
You're gonna have to spell, oh, you got his name? Okay.
I did fill out a form. With this path, if it goes in where it's projected, it is hardly ever going to be used. It's a dead-end path. It literally goes to the back of one house, stops, turn around, you walk back the same way you went in. It's not like a normal walking path where you walk all the way around and come out on the other side of the development. It specifically stays behind that part of the development, which, if you go back there, it is really wet, really muddy. Those are the lowest points in the development because everything on my street runs down to there. Okay, Baker Avenue is the high point, Merkel's the low point. All the water runs back into there. This path would hardly be used if we ever put it in. So we want to try to save that money. I know it's there, but come up with a different idea of how do we use that better where we can maybe incorporate more of the pond, which, by the way, we've been paying to get cleaned, maintained, look better. Somebody decided to put their goldfish in there, so we have some really large goldfish swimming around in there now. But with this plan here, we're actually proposing, let's put benches there so people can enjoy that pond. It's not just a drainage pond. We actually have wildlife that come out there. We see deer there. We see ducks and geese flying there all the time. It's more just not just a drainage pond. It's actually an active pond. There are fish and other wildlife that use it. And all we're asking here is, instead of putting this path back there that we're not going to use probably, one, because it's in the middle of the wetlands and nobody wants to walk back there right now without getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, and two, it dead ends. All you do is walk back and somebody, the people on Merkel who live there all have open basements. All their basements have openings out to the backyard. So when you're walking through that path, you could just look into all their houses. That's kind of weird. I don't know about you, but to me, I think that's weird. But with this proposal here is, we're saying we don't want it totally eliminated. We just want to repurpose it and use it for something else, like more focus on the pond that actually does have wildlife, and people can sit there and enjoy it when they do walk their dog. I walk my dog over there all the time, and I end up walking up Maple Street on the side of that conservation because there's no sidewalk, so I'm in the street. I'm walking down the street. I would love to sit down and just watch the pond for a little while with my dog. Right now, I can't. There's nowhere to sit, and it looks really weird with Lot 10 that the sidewalk just stops. It's like, here's green, and up there, look, there's a sidewalk. We're trying to actually fix that, where that actually gets blended in, and it's not just a dead end.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga.
I would, I would consider the statement I made earlier, which is that my view would be that your proposal now still would be a substantial reduction because of the number of units that no longer have any access to this and the size and interaction with the conservation area. But I do agree with the idea that if you could propose an alternate plan that would be less of a reduction of interaction with the conservation area and more useful to you as an owner, then I would be willing to look at, and I'm not speaking for everyone on the commission, but I think they may be willing to look at another plan that is less of a reduction in value and of the development.
Another option might be to go around the pond with a stone path and just focus on the pond.
I don't want to
I know, but
negotiate that now. I'm just saying that you might consider that as the option after we table this, rather than to just say that we're going to reduce it down to this corner situation.
No, that's fine. We're just trying to, we want to use it too because we like the outside. Most of the people like the outside in that development, but we just don't see really any purpose of that path the way it was designed.
Mr. Zeman, if we deem this a substantial deviation, and even with their alternate plan, it's not a this for that. It's either, it's a judge, right? It's not a, I'm a little lost of words. It's not that we can recommend it to council that with a different plan or how.
I think you can, actually, yeah. You're looking at an amendment to the development plan, and the question is the nature of the amendment. If the amendment is to simply eliminate an amenity, that becomes kind of a very, black and white choice to be made, whether it's a substantial departure or not. If the proposed amendment is to basically, as Mr. Varga indicated, take that full value and modify it, put it into some different type of configuration, that may affect whether or not you feel that the amendment is something that you can recommend as still being in substantial agreement with the purposes and intents of the original approval. Now, what that might look like, that obviously is up to the judgment of the commission.
But, Mr. Chairman, all that's in front of us right now is to vote on up or down on this proposal.
Or table it.
Table it.
I think we're better off tabling.
Yeah, I don't know if
letting
this
them go
plan
back.
does it justice of what your vision is around these ponds. You know, I don't know if what you have drawn here is to your full intent.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crocker?
question for the applicant. Would you be willing to go back to the homeowner association and talk to everyone and say, hey, we're going to come up with an alternate plan that maybe goes a little bit further, incorporates the pond, does a few more things, and then come back to us? Would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Then we should table.
Then I propose that we table this item.
I'll second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Berkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
Back to Starbucks.
We have a preliminary site plan of a restaurant, Starbucks, at 8323 Tyler Boulevard. Will that applicant come back up? Tell us a little bit about the site plan.
Okay, the site plan that you see in front of you is, again, for the location of a 2,000 square foot Starbucks. The primary consideration in the layout that we are proposing really had to do with traffic management and maintaining cars on the site, essentially, and not having them back up into the main drive aisle for the shopping center. Starbucks has become particularly sensitive or aware of traffic issues, especially through the pandemic, related to queuing on drive-throughs. And so when they can, they've erred on the side of accommodating more cars on site. Typically, in a situation like this, if for instance, they had a curb cut on Tyler Boulevard, they could orient the building facing Tyler and allow cars to come in and queue on site. By turning the building facing Giant Eagle, they've essentially done the same thing, but really allowed the only access into the site, which is off of the shopping center parking lot. So that's really the essence of it. The plans that you see show 12 cars in total in the stack for the drive-through. And it's 7 cars that are lined up from the order board to the window, and then 5 cars behind that, waiting to actually order. In terms of, I went right to the drive-through. There's some other things with this proposal. It is a 2,000 square foot building. We included elevations and a landscape plan. You know, the engineering and the site work are very straightforward. It's going to tap into all the existing utilities and stormwater management that exist at the shopping center. I'd be happy to talk about how the site's designed and operates, and then if we get into questions about the building and elevations, our project architects are here to discuss that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything from the administration?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think if you look at the proposed conditions under the subtitle preliminary site plan, the item number 2 indicates the front of the building shall face Tyler Boulevard, and the proposed building shall have 4-sided architecture. I'll address the second part of that first. The 4-sided architecture has been consistent on this site, and quite frankly, these elevations are seen from all four sides on just about every building there. So that would be something that we're that I think is pretty consistent with what we've done in these locations, not just here, but in other similar locations. Recent developments, including, I won't mention names, but both Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts on Menor Avenue, we've seen similar type of developments. But the first part of that, with respect to the front of the building, it's actually probably needs to be modified slightly, because the intent of that was not just to have the front of the building facing Tyler, but to actually have the building pushed toward Tyler and closer in alignment to, was that the Taco Bell there? And, you know, we think with a little bit of work, and that allows for you the opportunity to place the dumpsters behind the building, and that the drive-by traffic on Tyler gets the full benefit of that better alignment with the other existing commercial structures there, as well as being able to better present that building from the perspective of the driver and the right-of-way. We think with a little effort, their queuing could easily be resolved with just kind of flipping this site. And I think that's obviously the other conditions are somewhat consistent with what you've seen in similar sites, but in this particular case, it's an important one for us, where that building is. But the building just seems misplaced, stuck back there and out of alignment with what we'd want to see along Tyler there.
Thank you. Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
I go back to the original approval of this whole development, and I just want to reiterate the concept that the building, even though many of these types of facilities are kind of standard, I mean, I'm not saying that they're based on a single prototype, but they're basically a front, a side, and a back. And the back is usually utility and the access ladder to the roof and the dumpster and ground-mounted mechanical units and whatever. You know, they're different things. And the concept here for this entire subdivision, or this entire development, was that we would consider all four sides to be prime architectural elevations. How that's achieved is, you know, however you want to image your building. But we don't, right now, we have a southern exposure, a southern elevation that is clearly the back of the building, utility side. We have a trash compactor, or trash enclosure back there, and there may be some other maintenance things on the ground back there. You just need to incorporate those into a plan that they're fully landscaped. You know, when you're driving around the site, you're not driving around the dumpster, or the dumpster is fully cut off from view, so that people don't see it as the back. I don't really have a problem with however which end of the building you face one direction. We're just talking about that back side of the building looking like it's also an elevation that should face a major street. If you kind of quickly review the other buildings that have been approved for this, they've gone some distance from their standard detailing and their standard elevations to try to achieve that goal, with both the elevations of the building and the site features, the site amenities. So whether that changes your site plan, I don't know. And I don't know that I don't know if there's a restriction as to where the set building placement is based on the original requirements for the market garden development. I don't know if they're required to move the building to a certain location. Ms. Zeman, do you?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to review the.
Yeah, and
I'd have to review
I don't remember that
document.
either. I don't know if it's required, but it certainly has been expressed as desired. So, with that said, I think, we would not approve the elevations as submitted. And with this comments of the city, I would think that you would want to review the site plan again. So how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, well, what would you like to do?
Well, I have one point of clarification. The four-sided architecture, is the goal to screen the mechanical operations of the building, or is it to create just more visual interest similar to what's been done there?
Both.
Both, okay.
And I don't know if it was stated elsewhere here, but also, and this is like the standard thing in this, no rooftop equipment can be visible
Right.
from,
We
in this
did get
case,
that.
all four sides of the building.
This building's a bit of a challenge because you're gonna, you're gonna see it from all four sides, from the
Right.
right-of-way, and you don't enter your building from the right-of-way, you come around that access drive. And if you pay attention a little bit to the two other buildings that are there, you can see that the essence of the front of the building is appearing in the back too. So, and we went through great, strains to get that
Right,
too.
right.
So,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's understood. I don't, we'll work with staff to try and address it and figure out how to do something more. And that's more in line with what's out there.
I think that, yep.
So you want a table?
Table this.
Table 6?
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
To table item number 6.
Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes?
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a miscellaneous review to amend the approved development plan at 8160 Norton Parkway. Is that applicant here? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the clerk.
My name's Tom Dieterle. I'm with AODK Architects. Address is 14394 Detroit Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio.
Can you spell your last name?
Yeah, sure. It's Dieterle.
All right, could you tell us a little bit about the change here?
Sure. This project was submitted a little over a year ago. The approved site development plan has a shared access drive running along the east side of the site. At the time this project was developed and approved, there was a development to the east side of the site that was going on simultaneously. When the pandemic hit, things kind of shut down. Right now, the development on the east side of this site is on a different timeline right now. So what we're looking at doing is creating a dedicated access point to this site.
Thank you. Same building, just
Yes, sir.
access to Norton instead of a boulevard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anything from administration?
No objections. We see no problem with access when the other site develops, and it's good.
Okay, thank you. Anything from commission members?
Just to understand that when the boulevard is going to be built, you would change the access to the site, or this would be the permanent access?
This would be the permanent solution.
Whether or not that comes or not. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the two conditions.
Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a final site plan of a hospital at 8300 Norton Parkway. Is that applicant here?
Mr. Chair, I need to abstain from this item.
Thank you. You state your name and address for the clerk and tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Sure. David Berlekamp, that's B as in boy, E-R-L-E-K, A-M as in Mary, P as in Paul, 3320 Warrington Road, Shaker Heights, with architect with the Cleveland Clinic.
Brian Wall with Boswick Design Partnership, 2729 Prospect Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you.
So we're here tonight to receive final planning approval for the site plan for Mentor Hospital. Just to kind of refresh a little bit from the last time we presented, The hospital is situated on the southern portion of the site plan shown here. As the site begins to slope down, we placed the hospital kind of tucked into that hillside. So we'd be entering the main entry of the hospital at a mid-level. The site access, the public site access, is off of Norton Parkway, with a drive that would take patients and visitors and caregivers up to the front door, as well as some access points to the parking lot, if they have if they're familiar with the site. Separate from that, we do have an EMS dedicated entrance off of Center Street. And as kind of discussed with staff and previously, we have provided landscape screening as well as signage to direct the general public not to proceed through there. We've also, so that would be an ambulance-only entrance. We've also worked with staff to develop a kind of a vehicular flow should the general public accidentally turn in there, and they could be able to exit out up to the parking lot. Additionally, from the last time we've presented, we've added some additional landscape screening along the building, in line with some of the comments, to address some of the comments that we received from our preliminary review, and as well as added and maintained some of the berming that exists currently along Center Street. So some of that landscape screening would be able to screen both the helipad as well as some of the service areas of the building. And do you want? Yeah, those are the main updates from last time we presented.
Thank you. Anything from administration?
No, just a comment that the staff has worked extensively with their architects and engineers on this site, including with our fire department and obviously engineering and planning staff. We're satisfied with the layout. I think the last condition that we added, there was an intent to get the construction trailers within the right-of-way off of Center Street, so we've got that as a condition outside of the 100-foot easement area. They were very cooperative with that, and we'll be working with them closely on some of the signage in the right-of-way to try to manage concerns about people mistakenly entering into that emergency area. But I think, as he mentioned, we added the connection there to the main parking area for those that make a mistake, so that they don't have to back out or find an unsafe way out, and they can find their way back in. So I think we'll be able to manage the site effectively, so no concerns at this point.
And just to add one additional thing from our last review, working with the fire chief, we have added an enlarged canopy to allow for our drive-through pull-up ambulance arrivals at the ED. So that's shown there, dashed in. So we would be developing that to allow for pull-up or pull-through access for the EMS vehicles, not backup as well.
One more comment about the trailers. The construction team has updated their plan, and when we submit for our permit, you'll see that update.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga. I
I just have some kind of request for information about the hospital itself. It's going to get approved. You don't have to worry about that. And it had to do with some of the internal organization of the hospital. And many people have asked me questions, and I didn't really have answers. And since we're kind of interfacing with the public right now, maybe some of this would be of interest to them. One of the questions is does this have any trauma level rating?
This would be able to. I don't believe it has a specific trauma level. It would be a full functioning ED though.
Right, but trauma 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a different classification.
No, right.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't know. People ask me these questions, right? There was is there any ICC buildings? I mean, yeah, what do you call them? Not buildings, rooms.
ICU? Rooms?
ICU, I mean, yes.
No, there would be no ICU rooms.
Okay. There's 34 beds, 34 patient
Correct.
rooms. The only other thing that kind of, when I reviewed the plans, just to get a feel for how this is going to work, food service for this building is through a warming kitchen. Food would be prepared elsewhere, delivered here, replated or organized in a warming kitchen, and then delivered to the patient rooms.
Correct.
Right. How does the staff get fed? I mean, or how do they access food?
So we would have a on the second level. So basically the first level. So which is the middle level of the plan. So there would be a small cafe that's located near the entrance. So that would provide some food options for staff. We're exploring some different options as far as like a salad. There's different kind of salad vending options now.
Well, that's it just, and I see that space, and I understand. That looked to me like a coffee shop. I mean, it's the size of a bedroom.
It would be, yeah. It is small, but we are exploring some kind of micro distribution
Something
vending
else.
options.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, these are just kind of questions that people wondered about. And, you know, the idea is that we want a really nice hospital, and we want people to get really good service. And the way you do that is to have really happy employees. So I just want to make sure that, you know, the employees have places to eat and things like that. I didn't see a on-call space, an on-call room. It's the hospital operates 24/7, so there would be on-call doctors on.
That's correct. And we so there would be spaces for physicians to kind of hotel and kind of stay on location. We would be the hospital itself is very closely tied to Hillcrest Hospital.
I understand.
So in many ways we're sharing some of those that capacity off of Hillcrest.
Sure.
But there would be locations where kind of throughout the hospital.
There would be some place for an on-call doctor to be available at
yes.
night, or, you know, in the less busy hours.
Yes.
And the waiting room, if people wanted to have a snack, they would get it from that one location, and they would eat it in the waiting room. There's no cafeteria. There's no plans for a cafeteria or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah. The intent of that main waiting atrium is. And kind of waiting space is really to serve as kind of a multifunctional place that patients and visitors can wait, can have a snack, have a meal, small meal. Family can wait, things like that. Yep.
And no pediatrics.
That's correct. No pediatrics.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the 8 conditions.
Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Berkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Architectural review of a hospital, 8300 Norton Parkway. Tell us a little bit about the architecture.
Sure. So if we advance to, let's actually advance to the next slide if we could. Thank you. So as mentioned previously, the building's sited on the sloping part of the site. So the top image represents more of the front entrance of the space or of the building. It's predominantly a glass building, and it's in keeping with the aesthetic that the clinic has established over the last several years. The overall concept of the building was to remove all of the mechanical units and air handling units off of the roof of the building. That did a number of things for us that allowed us to introduce some skylights to serve both the upper inpatient level as well as that second, the main level of the building where that atrium waiting area was. So we were able to bring daylight into the space as well as along the perimeter of the space. The mechanical units are seen in the louvered kind of bookends of the buildings, where we've placed both the ED arrival entrance for EMS as well as the service entrance of the building on the opposite side of the lower image. The main expression of the building is more of a horizontal expression. We've gone with a kind of a medium gray for the metals on the building. We're looking at a consistent metal finish for the mullions, for the metal panels, and for the louvers. Obviously, based on shadows and kind of orientation, there would be some differences with that, but the thinking would be to simplify the palette of the building. The entrance itself to the building is kind of shown on the top image. So we've actually carved into the building, recessed the front door, so to speak, underneath the building, and also extended a canopy out. So it's a simple expression, but it will be lit both on the underside as well as the lighting continuing through. So we do feel that would provide an open and kind of light beacon, especially during the evening hours. Patients come.
Thank you. Anything from administration?
No, just comment that, the administration and even members of our council have had an opportunity to visit several of their sites, and, they have consistently placed a high value on aesthetics at all of their facilities. We like this design and think that we have every confidence that it'll be just as high quality as their other locations.
Thank you. Anything from the commission members? All right. Mr. Varga.
Just for my own clarification, a few things. On the lower level, there's a lobby and there's doors that go outside. I didn't see any site development at all. Is there going to be a little patio or something like that out there? Or?
Yeah, so currently, so those, actually, if you go back up one, you had it the first time there.
Yeah, the lower level, right
yes.
there, right.
So those double doors leading out, those were initially placed for egress, as a means of egress.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do have on the site plan, there is a concrete walk that extends along the southern edge of the building. And we do, we do hope that we can have, so you can see there kind of the lighting that runs along the building. So that is a concrete walk. And we do hope that possibly through some philanthropy funding, we can have some kind of walking paths or outdoor garden space.
Great.
So that's there, yeah.
And there are three objects on the site plan that are walled off kind of in the southeast corner. Is that a emergency generator, fire pump, and something else? Transformer. Okay, so that's what those. They're recessed. You don't see them. You can't. We won't be able to see them from 615. Because of the way they're being installed.
Right, that's correct. So from the north, they're going to be actually below the retaining wall that's kind of holding up that EMS drop off.
Right, they're down there.
Yeah, coming from the south, we're going to be planting landscaping along there, evergreen shrubs along there, so that'll be.
I can assume that's what that stuff was, but I wasn't sure. You're not near any residential, so I don't know that there's any issue with like the generator making emergency generator making too much noise or the fire pump. They're not used regularly. I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to commend you on working with the site, because I think that, as just mentioned, the ancillary spaces, that trash containers and everything being down and hidden, I think is a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
How many we got?
Motion to approve, no conditions?
Are there no conditions?
Second.
Samantha, please call the roll.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Rocker?
Yes.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Berkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything from administration?
No.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?